Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast. I'm your host, Cyril Gerald Quinn, on this 3rd of March, 2022. Hope everybody out there is having a great day. I am here to talk about another phenomenal, remarkable episode of simply the best show on television, Snowfall, Season 5, Episode 3, Lions. Of course, this episode marked the return of well, before we get into that, first of all, it's just a tremendous episode from start to finish. uh the themes of this episode, uh called Lions, and to me it was really one king. Like, you had a bunch of lions in this episode. You had some lions who were thorough lions, Franklin Saint and Scully, and you had some pretenders and some young, and our guy Mello, who of course did not turn out well for us. So you had some, you had some lions who are always plotting. Louie and Jerome. We'll talk certainly more about that. Franklin Saint had a quote in this: "Lions sometimes eat their young." That was from Franklin Saint. We'll revisit that theme later on in the podcast. Um, just a quick before we get into the deep dive, just a quick overview of the episode. We saw the return of one Scully, and I'm so happy that they didn't kill his character off. DeAndre Bonds, and I've said this a number of times on this podcast. Is he just destroys that role. Like, I really can't even see anybody else playing that role, to be honest with you. I think he was just born to play that role. Like, there's certain actors that play roles that you say to yourself, this guy or this young lady, this woman was made. They this is who they are, not as a person, but just in terms of the character. They were just made to play this particular character, and that's no question. DeAndre Bonds was played to play this character. I'm glad they didn't kill the character off. He returns. You see Teddy Mack uh, try to flex and basically giving some interaction between him and Franklin that we'll get into. You see Teddy Mack give no flex in terms of the price of the brick, and you see Jerome and Louie in basically perfect harmony in terms of how they navigated and made big moves in this episode. And let's begin with that. Let's begin with the deep dive. New segment in this podcast where we will deep dive situations. We will deep dive certain characters. I thought this was a perfect episode to. I thought initially that Scully was going to be the deep dive, but Jerome and Louie proved to be my deep dive, because they pull off just this brilliant maneuver, um, of just basically, and we'll talk more about this later on, but basically they turn a situation that could have been volatile with dealing with Scully in essence, without firing a gun. Like, how they how they ended up getting $50,000 from Scully and keeping the price of brick at the same price, when Scully, was promised by them, was promised that it would go lower. Of course, Teddy Mack, completely rebuked that, and just basically told Franklin that that's not going to happen. So they had to maneuver. They had to do some shit that only two people who are on one accord can do. And this is, again, we'll talk more about what they did in the terms of best scenes, but you gotta remember with Jerome and Louie, there was a time where these two characters were not fucking with each other. I mean, let's go back to season one. Look at the evolution of their relationship. Season one, season two, Louie's out there sleeping with Claudia, who of course owned the club and was doing her dirt, and they end up and they end up she ends up Claudia would later on overdose off some heroin from Louis, and of course, Claudia and Louis got into that fight. So their relationship has really gone full circle, and it's gotten stronger as the seasons have come along. And there was a time that Jerome just wanted to be just wanted to sell dime bags, and remember, Louis is in essence the heart and soul of the entire organization, even more so than Franklin State. And I'll get to that, the importance of that later on in this podcast. But Louis is the one that has those instincts, and she was made to be, she wanted to be in the game. She's a hustler, she's smart, she's beautiful. And you thought with her and Jerome, like, do they really match as a couple? Like, or is this just two people who are just physically attracted to each other? And you kind of questioned that for the first couple of seasons, and then things kind of started coming together for them. Like, I would say towards the end of season 3, and then you go in season 4. She finally confides in Jerome that, hey, Teddy Mack is with the CIA, and that we have no choice but to do what we're doing. And Jerome, they all, and at that point, they're on one accord. But the bottom line, she is still. If you're looking at her, if you're looking at Louis and Jerome, Louis by far is the more dangerous of the two. It's really not even close. Like, Louis by far, Jerome is a muscular dude, and Jerome kind of popped off last season when took a turn for the dark the last season, especially after Louis got shot. But it's Louis who you should fear if you if you're trying to take down the Franklin Saint organization. Louis the one. Like, that's all there is to it. So up until this point, at this point, they are as good as they have been in terms of being connected as one. Period. Now, yeah, they still have a squabble here and there, as couples do, married and unmarried do, in terms of relationship. But in terms of the drug game, these two are right now operating, machine like. And what they pulled off in this episode was you know was just brilliant. What they pulled off in this episode. So you have these two characters who, again, these are big pieces of Franklin's organization that right now are not all the way connected with Franklin. So again, we'll see how that plays out. But this Jerome and Louie are this episode's deep dive. Best scenes: Franklin, the opening scene, Franklin, Louie, and Jerome, their first meeting. Of course, this began with Franklin, Louie, and Jerome, and it also would end with Franklin, Louie, and Jerome as well. So they find out that in this first scene, they're in the restaurant. Excuse me, they're in the club, and Franklin, of course, tells them about the meeting he had with Teddy. Well, not even a meeting, with Teddy basically showing up at his house and saying that Grady was out. So and also not only Jerome was there, Leon was there as well. So they're basically speculating what happened to Grady. What does this mean moving forward? And Franklin basically said, well, this is where he has the quote, well, lions, eat their young. So they're speculating whether or not Grady was killed by Teddy. Leon basically says he thinks he was. They're not sure. So, and at that point, they explain. Franklin also mentions, that he, that this kind of, caught him off guard, in terms of what's going on, with Teddy. So they discussed that. In this opening scene. You see again. You see Franklin trying to navigate what he thinks Teddy is going to do next. Teddy and Franklin. So Teddy and Franklin meet. You have Teddy and Franklin meeting. Franklin basically says, look, but I don't. Basically says I don't ever come up to my place like that unannounced again. Teddy does not flex at all. Does not bend at all on the price of the price of the kilos. He says it's going to remain at 10,000. It's not going. He's not going to lower it, and basically calls Franklin out for the inner strife that we will later talk about. That's between he, Louie, and Jerome, and more so he and Louie. And basically, and again, Teddy's no dummy. He realizes that the only reason that his prices are not outrageous, but the only reason that Franklin's asking for these lower prices are to acquiesce to Jerome and Louie because they're all not on the same page. So Franklin also discusses, and then this is the first episode that we had, and also in that opening scene, this is the first time we hear Franklin even talk about his father, and we not, apparently Alton is missing. We know Alton is dead. Like I don't think there's any question that Teddy killed Alton, but there's no body, and he's missing. Again, I'll be curious to see when Sissy comes back, which I think is the next episode. Sissy's coming back from Cuba, in terms of what her part in it, or what did she witness, things of that nature. So I think they're going to start. They're kind of slowly unraveling this Alton mystery in terms of what exactly transpired. But again, I will be convinced until I see otherwise that he was killed by Teddy Mack. But but this is the first episode that we see Franklin discuss Alton. He's basically said, Alton got what was coming to him, and he does not show any type of emotion towards them in that scene of anger that Alton was killed, or or Alton's missing. He doesn't. During the Teddy Franklin meeting, you hear Teddy go into defense mode when Alton is brought up. Basically said, "Hey, your father was a very high, he was basically not a wanted man, but he was a very wanted asset that by the KGB and these various different organizations, these different world undercover organizations, KGB, CIA, and what have you." And he had a lot of enemies based on the fact that he was about to expose everybody. So there's no telling what happened. This is where I think Teddy slipped when he said, "I had nothing to do with it." So it's kind of like one of those things. Well, if you had nothing to do with it, you don't have to say you had nothing to do with it. You could just say, "This, your dad was, your dad was wanted by a lot of people. Like your dad was someone who anybody could have. There's no telling where he's at." And again, Teddy, at the beginning, I thought Teddy was convincing from saying, "Hey, he could be in jail." We don't. I don't know. I don't know. But when he says to me, he slips when he says, "I had nothing to do with it." And I think that was a mistake that if I'm Franklin, and again, Franklin is in a great headspace right now as far as his focus and as far as his, being, thinking about in terms of him reading Teddy, and we'll talk more about that. So they leave the meeting. And of course, at the end of the meeting, I mentioned earlier that Franklin says, "I don't ever pull up on me without unannounced, like I don't ever, or come to my place." So you had the Gustavo Franklin meeting in terms of the drop. Now Franklin's trying to fill out Gustavo. This is a place that was handpicked by Teddy, but that was handpicked by Teddy for this meet. It's kind of an abandoned warehouse. Look like some type of like old abandoned warehouse power plant, some type of, not a power plant, but just abandoned warehouse. And of course Teddy is in the warehouse, and he is spying on Franklin. With the meeting, Franklin begins to talk, and then Franklin looks up and realizes that somebody is listening. He gets his sixth senses, his spider senses kick in, and he completely, in mid-sentence, shifts the entire conversation. So he says, "Yeah, Teddy, I'm cool working with Teddy. Grady out of pocket, just starts talking a bunch of bullshit." and he starts mentioning that, starts joking with Gustavo about his jacket. Again, at the beginning of this conversation, he's basically trying to get a feel of what's he's trying to get. He's trying to get Gustavo to give him some information about what happened with Grady, or on even on Teddy Mac. And Gustavo, to his credit, isn't falling for the bait. Really keeps tight-lipped, doesn't give Franklin anything. But again, important. It was the important part of this scene was the fact that Franklin recognized in mid sentence that something wasn't right about this. So we go to Dallas, Diamond Dallas, Jerome and Louie. This was a funny and sad scene at the same time. So Jerome and Louie are trying to come at they get to give you some context. Scully comes, of course, is back. Scully is just on a whole nother level of just he's completely just lost his mind, and he's in a he's I shouldn't even say lost his mind, but he's in a dark place. He's continuously quoting Bible scriptures. He has guys outside of his lair in Compton, butt naked and with Bible scriptures on them. He cuts the ear off of one of his guys who he thought was just didn't do what he says or whatever it was. Cuts his ear off. So Scully's on one. Like Scully was on one in this episode. Constantly quoting Bible scriptures, Old Testament. So they enact this plan to along course with Mello. They enact this plan. They enact this plan to try to get at Scully. And they go to Diamond Dallas. Diamond Dallas, of course, who are not ex strippers, are still currently stripping. Know this stripper that strips, that was basically the personal stripper for Scully's number 2, Mello. So they used them. They convinced them to go use her to get some intel. From Mello, or intel about Mello. And during the scene, they're going back and forth. Keep in mind, these are the two that shot Diamond, shot Louie last season. Diamond and Dallas are there with they pull up. Jerome and Louie pull up to Diamond and Dallas at their kids' school. Both their kids, Diamond and Dallas, go to the same school. So they're having this conversation about this criminal conversation right in front of the kids, like it's nobody's business. They ain't tell the kids, hey, go across the street, get in the car. No. They're literally having this conversation right in front of the kids who couldn't be any more than 7 or 8, if that. Diamond apologizes to to Louie, saying, I'm glad it didn't basically go the other way. And so I'm glad you didn't die. And it was like one of those apologies, like, oh, by the way, I'm glad you're still living. Again, Jerome is still not feeling them. He basically calls them hired guns, and they'll go do anything for the money. Franklin, of course, they are under Franklin's thumb. Like they're working for Franklin, but they still do this favor for Louie and Jerome. They get intel on Mello. Mello meets with the stripper. And she basically says that Mello is spending a lot of money, so that means Mello has been promoted. And little did I know at that point, Jerome and Louie saw Mello as a weak link. I didn't recognize it at that point of where this was going. So Mello comes to them basically and says, I don't have this on here, but this is of course one of the scenes. Mello comes to them and basically says, hey, look, nobody's feeling Scully. If somebody took him out, no one would miss him. I can't do this by myself. I'll give you the meat. I will give you the meeting place. You gotta take the shot. And I'll take over. And they asked for in terms $100,000. Started out 50, but then Louie says, well, since you're gonna make it 100, because then Mello says, well, I would have did it for 100. You could have got 100, and then Louie says, okay, yeah, well, it's 100 then. So basically, They're gonna take Scully out for $100,000 and to not have to deal with him moving forward, and deal with a guy seemingly that they would be able to control it. Mello. Remember, Mello is just somebody that's ambitious, that's looking for, he just got the number 2 spot. It's not like Mello has been I don't remember Mello from last season. Like somebody, that listens to this podcast, once you listen to this podcast, if you can correct me if you remember Mello from last season. I don't remember Mello from last season. He could have been on there. Wouldn't be surprised either way, but he has, he has his eyes on the prize, on the throne, so to speak, and he, thinks that Scully being unstable, as he was, and and just being in the place that he was, he sees that as a advantage to take Scully out. So they make the deal. They get the drop on Scully at this psychic that he sees, that he was seeing, um, because it was his daughter's birthday. Now, again, this is how Scully had a picture of his daughter. He had balloons in his place, in his place. He had balloons in his place in his daughter's birthday, and was talking to his daughter. Has a necklace with his daughter on it, or with the picture with his daughter Khadijah, and him as well. I think that might have been that. But Scully is just, he's grieving. Scully, I mean, let's be honest. Scully is still grieving. Lost his daughter and lost his baby mama, and basically within one season, in a season. So the plan works. They get the drop on Scully, and they leave us at, they basically saying that, hey, we didn't want it to be like this. So we don't see them pull the trigger on Scully. And at this point, I'm saying to myself, if we don't see them pulling the trigger, they didn't kill him. Like, this character's too good to kill. He's too good of a character to kill. Something's not right here. So we get to the scene. Scully, Louie, Jerome, and Mello. They pull. Mello comes in. He gets the confirmation because that he comes in with 2 other guys with the money. He says, I haven't heard anything on the police scanner. Where's the proof? They take out the necklace, and then Mello basically just, is just, basically is in awe, because he's like, yeah, the throne is mine. And he talks, I got pour one out for the homie. I got give me a couple of days to kind of like smooth things over with the rest of the crew. Give me a couple of days to get set up shop to make that transitional days. And then all of a sudden Scully comes out, and then Scully proceeds to snap Mello's neck and take the 2 guys away. And what happens is we find out that the connection that Scully made with Louie and Jerome in the hospital in the 4th season, in essence, saved his life. And it was part of saving his life, because here's the thing. I don't believe that they were ever going to kill Scully, to be honest with you. And I don't believe that they were ever going to kill Scully to replace with Mello. To replace him with Mello. Mello is, like I said, Mello is a guy that they probably could have controlled. But his thing is, it's old saying, the devil you know. Bottom line is they know Scully. And they have, again, they know Scully is, they know Scully. And again, last season, what transpired in the hospital, that was probably the, and again, I didn't think too much of that, what happened last season at the end with the hospital, and the fact that Scully could have killed Louie and Jerome and chose not to. But that clearly was played a major factor. I also think that, now again, this was a brilliant plan, to say at least, by Jerome and Louie, because remember, Scully was not going to take the offer, and he was not going to settle for 10 keys. First of all, he ends up settling. He ends up saying, "Hey, we're going back to the original price of 10 keys, and you can even keep the money that you would pay to kill me with, which is basically $100,000." So not only does Jerome and Louie make the peace with Scully and keep the price at 10 keys, they also up $100,000 from basically from Scully. That basically was Scully's money because it's from his organization. And Scully's like, look, I don't basically said I don't want that Judas money. And so again, how long this relationship lasts, Scully is so unstable. Who knows? And maybe there was, maybe if Mello doesn't come to them with this offer, maybe maybe that Louie and Jerome are plotting throughout the course of the season to take Scully out anyway, and maybe they can still end up taking Scully out. Who knows? But again, I think I think the show is better with Scully. To be honest with you, at this point, I don't think now would have been a time to take out Scully. So I was happy from that standpoint, from a writing standpoint, that they didn't take out Scully. But again, this scene, this situation was about Jerome and Louie working as one, and just how they maneuvered the situation to their advantage. Again, without pulling without pulling a gun, and without a gunshot. So we go to the final scene. It's not listed on here. It should be on here, with Franklin, Louie, and Jerome. They're meeting. They discuss. They tell Franklin what transpired with Scully. Telling Louie says basically, I did it without using a gun. Franklin basically warns them of how careful they're going to have to be because with Teddy and what transpired with that. And then you see Franklin go at it basically with Louie. But this was Franklin versus Louie. Jerome was like, look, y'all need to handle this. This is basically this, y'all need to handle this. And when we find out, and this was no surprise whatsoever, Louie was the one that really wanted to break away from Franklin last season. That Louie drove that more than this was Louie. Like this is Louie's doing her, Queen Macbeth type deal, her Cersei type deal with being that with driving this train. Her and Franklin go at it. Franklin basically says, "Hey, y'all need to come home. I'm not these prices. Like, look, we're better together. We are better together. Right now, we're better together. Y'all need to come home. I don't." And basically, they go at it, and Louis says, he basically he asks Louis, "What do you want? Like, what else do you want? Because you're never satisfied." And she said, And Louis basically, Louis says, I don't want to be under anybody's thumb. Like I don't want you to tell me what to do. That's in essence what she was saying, and that's just not going to work out from a standpoint of Franklin right now has as much power that than he's ever had, and he's beyond Kingpin status. He's not. I mean, Kingpin is like light work for Franklin. Right? That's not even a proper title to call him right now. Like he's beyond that. In terms of what else he's doing with the real estate and things of that nature. So there's no way in the world that Franklin was going to concede that at that moment and saying, you know what, let's just operate. Let's operate like a corporation where there's no bosses via the commission. Like, no, that shit wasn't going to happen. So I think I personally think Franklin is right. Like they all need to be on one page. They all listen. They all are going to have to be on one page in order to deal with Teddy Mack. That's just all it is to it. Like they're all of them are going to have to be in order to combat him and to combat him. They're all going to be on one page. MVPs Jerome and Louie, and that, again, I don't think Franklin can take out Teddy and can outwit Teddy without Louie, to be honest with you. Think about this with Louie. Remember, Louie is the one that identified Man Boy to be the more dangerous out of the two in terms of Scully and Man Boy. So yeah, Scully is unpredictable and wild and crazy, But Man Boy is the one with the ambition. He's cunning. He's similar to you, similar to Franklin. She called that out. She also called it out in the hospital in terms of the plan, in terms of how to get at Man Boy. If to get at Man Boy, you remember that. So it is vital, to say the least, that Louie and Franklin are on the same page. Like, that is, from an organizational standpoint, that is the most important relationship of the Saint organization by far. It's not even close. MVPs. This was very easy. It was clearly Jerome and Louie. Again, to avoid to avoid a war with Scully and come out plus $100,000. I mean, you can't, like, and again, with no violence in terms of no blowback towards them, and have Scully on the same page, be on the same, basically on the same page as much as you can with a Scully type character, was brilliant. I give them all the credit in the world. This will be probably one of the easier MVPs of this season. A couple of other things. Very interesting to see how, again, this Franklin Jerome Louie dynamic is going to drive the season. We know that. Second time in this three episodes that we've seen Peaches with some type of cold. I don't like, again, I got burnt by this when I broke down Insecure last season with Kelly. Remember they did about 4 or 5 episodes, or maybe more than that, where they had some death reference for Kelly, and I'm saying, I told everybody who would be willing to listen, Tiffany Quinn, that Kelly will die before the season. I was dead wrong. Now, again, maybe from a metaphorically, a part of Kelly's old life died, so maybe that definitely had to be the case. Otherwise, it didn't make any sense. I still was disappointed. By the whole not killing Kelly, considering the prediction I made. I don't know what's going to happen. Peaches is not a big character, but I don't understand why you keep bringing up the fact that he's sick. Like, why? First time is like a throwaways. Oh, okay, summer cold, whatever. But why is he? I'm thinking something really might be wrong with Peaches. Like, Peaches is like something. I don't know. Peaches has, I ain't gonna say cancer or something like that. I don't know what's something like. I just don't. I think it's too much of a coincidence for them to revisit that a second time. I don't have it on here, but Wanda is gonna, gets a job. He's gonna get a job with Franklin. Again, I don't know I don't think that's gonna turn out well. I can't see Wanda just doing handiwork and being content with it. I just don't think that's gonna end well for Wanda. I really don't. That's just going to be about. I think I covered everything here about this episode. Tremendous episode, to say the least. And perfectly titled Lions. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Ril Dil podcast. I will see you next time. Have a great rest of your evening.